Welcome back to the Ag Renovators channel. Last 2 weeks, I had a workshop on grafting of cocoa. I concentrated on one technique, and that technique at the time I described as the minimalist grafting technique. I promised that I would have come back and to share with the group at the time because the exercise was not meant for social media at the time of doing the grafting exercise. But the participants of that workshop felt that it would be a good thing to share with others who may not have been able to attend the session. And here we are now sharing even further afield than was initially thought. So we're happy, especially for some of the comments that we have gotten so far from persons online, and the fact that there are many people who are viewing and persons are following, that is on TikTok and the YouTube channel. People are also subscribing. So let us return to the grafting exercise. During that session, one participant asked a question: how long should it be before the tape, the budwood that I had used to wrap the cyan material, how long should it take before it can be removed? If you look at the previous video that was posted 2 weeks ago, you would realize that the entire budwood was wrapped in the plastic. Now, we did that in order to create a microclimate, and in that situation, it would reduce the possibility or reduce the drying out of the budwood, and in so doing, it creates a kind of microclimate, and also in maintain the humidity between the budwood and the environment. Now, before I go any further, I would just like to take you to the bud union, because this was one of the things that we mentioned while we were having the workshop, that the bud union would take between 10 to 14 days to start developing to the point where where your grafting is now showing signs of success. Now, I want to mention here that grafting is just not a physical exercise, but there are a number of molecular and physiological events that do occur. And just to explain a little bit more without going into the details, these molecular and physiological events that I'm talking about relates to the upregulation of certain genes and the transcription of of the message, the signal that those that occur during that process. I'll explain further in another video that will come maybe in another week or so. Now, those molecular events can be seen at the phenotypic level in certain manifestations. Those manifestations we could conveniently compartmentalize into three phases. The first phase would be tissue adhesion, and that usually occurs between 1 and 3 days. And then we have callus formation, which is usually between, say, 4 and maybe 5 days. And then we have vascular reconnection, which happens or which starts to occur between 6 and 8 days. So those stages are very important to really have a successful graft union developing. Now we have done two grafts. So having seen the callus formation on one, and of course the new leaves that are now coming out, one can safely say that barring any incompatibility that may arise down the road, we can say at this point that the mastery of the grafting process has been clearly demonstrated here. Because here we have rapid callousing and now we have new growth taking place. So I move over to the second grafting that was done on the same day. And here we have a similar type of growth taking place. So first let's look at the callus formation, which is clearer than the first, but nonetheless, we are still able to see in both cases the callus taking place. Of course, here we have some new auxiliary buds, pre-existing buds now peeping up in this particular example. Now I want to touch on the type of grafting that I'm practicing, that I practiced and is trying to develop some repeatability and some kind of validation of its efficacy. Now, I refer to this type of grafting as the minimalist green grafting techniques. Why why have I referred to it as minimalist green grafting? One, the size of the budwood or the cian. Let's take the length. The length can range anywhere between 1.5 inches to 3 inches. So it's 1.5 to 3 inches. And the diameter of the budwood can range anywhere between 1/8 to 1/4 inch. So that's the size that we are trying, the size range that we are experimenting with. And that's the reason why we refer to it as the minimalist green grafting approach. Another thing that I want to point out is the position on the rootstock that the grafting is being done. Now, if you look at this area, you'll see a scar at this area. So this area is what is the juncture between the epicotyle, which is this section, anything above this juncture, we refer to as the epicotyle, and then below is the hypocotyle in the seedling. Now, it therefore means that the graft union is below the juncture. It means then that we we grafted it at the hypocotyl. And in cocoa, this is very important because cocoa bears on old wood, and in and below the hypocotyl, one we do not expect any shoots or leaves or fruit to develop below the epicotyl. The shoots I'm talking about would be your chupons. I should point out, however, that you can have shoots or chupons developing close to the ground, but not necessarily the hypocotyl, but maybe from roots, from lateral roots. Chupons can emerge from those. But with respect to the hypocotyl, it is not customary to have chupons developing directly at the hypocotyl. Okay, so that is very important. Now, if you graph high up on the epicotyl, what you may find happening is that you could start to have pods developing on the epicotyl of the rootstock itself, which is not desirable. Where you want your pods to develop is on the root, on the trunk of the scion, of the mature scion. That is where you want your fruits to develop, or your pods, the cocoa pods to develop. So therefore, if you graft very high up on the hypocotyl, the epicotyl, then what you're doing is reducing that vertical space for cocoa to be produced on your on your scion, mature scion. So those are some important things to bear in mind when it comes to grafting at cocoa. So again, this type of grafting is a minimalist green grafting approach, which is being done using the technique that we refer to as side veneer grafting. This could be done using a wedge as well, but the problem with that is when you use a wedge at the hypocotyl juncture, if that graft union is not successful, then you don't really have a second chance, because that plant is likely to die. That rootstock likely to die. But when you do it like this, you still maintain to a large extent the entire rootstock. And so you have more than one chance of regrafting if the first graft is not successful. So this is one of the reasons why I prefer to use the veneers, the side veneer grafting, than the wedge or cleft grafting. Good. So just to go back to the next plant that we have here now. So now that we see some growth taking place, 1 week after this, what I would do is to carry out a process known as forcing. And forcing can be done in many different ways, but the method that I use is to sever at the top, maybe about 4 inches minimum above the highest point of the graph, or the scion, right? So I would do about 4 inches, and I cut on the opposite side of where the bud union is, because what I want is for whatever photosynthetic reserves or photosynthase that is produced, or that is synthesized in the uh, in the leaves, that and as a result of the remaining leaves, we want it to move on the side where the scion is, right? So we want it to move on the side where the scion or the graph union is. So we would make the cut on the opposite side, and then we would bend back the crown in the direction of the scion itself. And so what you will have is the material, the photosynthase will move closer to where the bud union is developing. So that is something that we would practice. So to get successful grafting and to ensure that the graft union develops quickly and strongly, it takes quite a number of steps in order to achieve successful grafting. But of course, it will pay for itself in the long run. And in many instances, we find that cocoa, the success, especially here in Jamaica, the success rate for grafted cocoa is usually very low. And so it's important that we practice all the necessary steps to ensure that we can improve on the success rate, getting it up above 80% success. Meaning, if you do 100 plants, then if we can take it up to 80%, then you should get about 80 of those plants alive after, say, a month, at least a month. You should have at least 80% of those 100 plants that you would have grafted alive. So, all right, viewers and subscribers, this is what I intended to share with you today. I hope it was of some useful purpose. And we will, as promised, we will share a video explaining the molecular and physiological aspects of grafting. And so I invite you to like and share this video, and please comment on what you think about it. You may have another way, maybe a better way of doing it. I would be very happy for you to share your personal experiences with the grafting of cocoa or any other fruit tree crop. So thank you for tuning in, and we will be sharing more videos like this shortly. Bye bye.